He was only 14, walking home after school, when he saw the car pulled over on the side of the road. A flat tire, a man in a suit, clearly stuck. With no hesitation, he stopped to help. But what started as an act of kindness quickly spiraled into something else, something darker. Flashing lights, suspicious eyes, a world ready to judge him not by what he had done, but by the color of his skin. What happened next would not only change his life forever, it would force everyone watching to confront a brutal truth. Marcus was a kid most people overlooked. 14, skinny, always carrying a backpack that seemed far too heavy for his small frame. His mom worked double shifts at a diner, and his evenings were spent walking the same cracked sidewalks home, his shoes, worn but steady. He didn't complain. Life was what it was. On this day, the late sun hung low, spilling orange light across the street. Marcus spotted the car pulled over ahead. The driver, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, stood helplessly by the flat tire. His tie was loosened, his phone pressed to his ear, but the frustration in his gestures made it clear. He wasn't getting help anytime soon. Marcus slowed, hesitated. Most people in his neighborhood learned to keep their heads down, to avoid trouble, to pass by and not get involved. But Marcus had a streak of kindness that this mother often worried would get him hurt. He crossed the street. The man looked surprised, almost dismissive at first. But when Marcus asked if he needed help, the hesitation faded. Together they worked. Marcus had seen his uncle change tires before. His small hands moved quickly, loosening bolts, lowering the jack. The man watched, impressed despite himself. Within minutes, the tire was fixed. The man exhaled, relief written across his face, and that's when the flashing red and blue lights appeared at the end of the street. A patrol car slowed, then stopped, headlights cutting across Marcus like a spotlight. His stomach dropped. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was helping. But deep down, he already knew this was the kind of moment that could shift from ordinary to dangerous in seconds. The car doors opened. 2 officers stepped out, their boots heavy against the pavement. Their hands hovered just a little too close to their belts. Marcus froze, wrench still in his hand. He looked at the man in the suit, waiting for him to explain. But the officers didn't ask questions. Their eyes locked on Marcus. "Put it down!" one of them barked. His voice was sharp, commanding. Marcus set the wrench on the ground, his hands trembling. The suited man started to speak, to explain, but the officers cut him off. Their focus never left the boy. "What are you doing here?" The question wasn't curiosity. It was accusation. Marcus stammered, trying to find words, his chest tightening. His heart pounded so loud he barely heard the man insist, again, that Marcus was helping him. But suspicion doesn't loosen easily. One officer circled closer, scanning Marcus up and down. The other radioed something in, eyes sharp with mistrust. A small crowd began to gather, neighbors, passers-by, drawn by the flashing lights. Phones came out, recording. Marcus felt the heat of every eye on him, the weight of being on display. His knees threatened to give out. The suited man stepped forward, raising his voice now, demanding that they listen. He repeated that Marcus had saved him, that without the boy, he'd still be stranded. But it was as if his words were smoke in the air, dissolving before they reached the officers. Marcus's hands rose higher, trembling. He thought of his mother, of her warnings, of the countless stories he'd overheard on the news. His mind raced with one desperate thought: don't make the wrong move. The tension grew unbearable. The officers' hands hovered inches from their holsters. Every breath Marcus took felt like it might be his last. And then, silence. A silence so thick, so sharp, it could cut. The moment stretched, unbearable, until finally, one officer's hand closed on his holster. The crowd gasped, Phones raised higher. Marcus's world slowed to a terrifying crawl. He had done nothing wrong. Nothing. And yet, here he was, facing the possibility that his life could end before it had even truly begun. His body shook, his arms locked above his head. The flashing lights blurred in his eyes. The man in the suit shouted louder this time, his voice cracking with anger and desperation. He moved between Marcus and the officers, blocking their view. "He helped me," he yelled. "Don't you see? This boy saved me." For a split second, it looked as though the officers might still advance, suspicion rooted too deep to be swayed. The air was electric, charged with fear. The crowd held its breath. And then, one officer hesitated. His grip loosened. The tension thinned, not gone, but enough to shift the moment. Marcus's arms ached from being raised so long, but he dared not lower them. He stood frozen, watching, waiting, his fate balanced on a razor's edge. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't safe. It was survival. Barely. And in that fragile pause, Marcus realized something he would never forget. No matter how kind, how helpful, how innocent he was, there would always be those who saw only the color of his skin. The silence finally broke, not with violence, but with words. The man in the suit stepped forward, his voice firm, undeniable. He told the officers again, this time louder, that Marcus had saved him, that without this boy's help, he might still be stranded, in the dark. His tone carried a weight they couldn't ignore. Reluctantly, the officers eased back. The tension in the air thinned, but it didn't disappear. Marcus lowered his hands slowly, his body still trembling. He was free to walk away, but he wasn't. Walking away unchanged. That night etched itself into his memory. Not just the flashing lights or the way suspicion seemed to stick to his skin like a shadow, but the terrifying truth that kindness alone wasn't enough to protect him. Even when he had done everything right, his existence was questioned. The man he helped would later reach out, offering gratitude, even opportunities. But for Marcus, the lasting impact wasn't measured in gifts. It was in the painful reminder that his life could be weighed and nearly lost in an instant. And the truth is, Marcus's story isn't rare. It's a reflection of what so many black boys and girls face every day. To help, to work hard, to simply exist, and still carry the burden of suspicion. It's a story that repeats in different streets, different towns, different lives, but always with the same heavy echo. So the question becomes, how many more times will this story play out? How many more Marcus will be forced to raise their hands, trembling while the world holds its breath? Because in the end, this isn't just his story. It's ours. A mirror held up to a reality we can no longer turn away from. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us listen, if enough of us care, the next boy who stops to help won't have to fear losing everything for simply doing what's right.